So we just had the Patent Reform Act passed, and this does affect your rights as an inventor and your proper use of provisionals. Under the old law was we're one of the last three major nations in the world to have the first to invent law. And under first to invent, if you were the first to invent an invention, even if you weren't the first to file for patent protection on it, you could still try to get the patent in your name as opposed to a competitor's name if you could prove that you did not unreasonably delay in taking your idea from a mental state to a conceptual state and getting your patent application filed. Now, this was a very unpopular law because in many of the cases where it was challenged, the general opinion was that people would basically fudge laboratory notebooks, make up fake meetings, and generally try to lie themselves to an earlier date of invention. And so as a result, in fewer than 3% of the cases that were challenged here did the person who claimed to be the first to invent but the second to file actually win. As a result, under the Patent Reform Act, we have switched from a first to invent to a first to file jurisdiction, which brings the U.S. in line with basically the rest of the world. Under first to invent, they don't really care who is under first to file. USPTO examiners don't really care who is the first to invent. They care who is the first to get your patent application filed. And so this does affect your rights under this scenario. Now, under this scenario, inventor A files a provisional, and then they disclose the invention. So far they're doing everything properly. Then competitor B files their own utility patent in March of 2013. Inventor A then files their utility patent December 31st, 2013. And inventor A has done everything pretty well because they filed within a year. So they should be able to claim this priority date. But if the USPTO says, you know what, this provisional patent that you got from elcheapopatents.com is no good, it doesn't provide support, the USPTO examiner can give them the effective filing date of December 31st. Now, under the old first to invent law, this person could still say, well, look at my provisional, I was the first to invent. But under first to file, they lose the race to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. So now, more than ever, it's important to have a well-written provisional as your starting point, because if you lose that priority date, you can really lose your patent rights to a competitor. Now, there are two different situations here with inventor B. If inventor B honestly came up with this idea on their own, and believe me, in any industry, whoever is working on an idea, there probably are competitors who are working on a similar idea. So if B honestly came up with the idea on his or her own, then B is going to win. If B, on the other hand, stole the idea from A at the trade show, or however A disclosed it, A can still go after B under a falsified declaration, because with every patent application you have to submit a declaration in which you swear to be in your opinion, the first and true inventor. And so if A can say, you know what, I can show that I've got a video of B walking by my booth and saying, hey, that's a great idea, I've never seen anything like it before, you're the smartest inventor I've ever run into, and then they can show that video, then they could perhaps invalidate B's patent application or a resulting patent based on that. So you do have to be careful with declarations. It doesn't necessarily mean people can steal your idea, but you can lose the race to the patent office. All right. So anyway, you can challenge based on falsified declarations, but it's going to cost you some money. And I guarantee you're going to spend more on challenging the validity of somebody else's patent than you are on the provisional that would have done it right to begin with. So the bottom line here, best case scenario here is you file the provisional patent application before you disclose the invention. That's really the smartest way to do it here. Second thing, got to have a well-written provisional that's going to later support the utility patent application. Remember that you can be denied your priority date of the provisional if the examiner finds there's inadequate support in the provisional for the utility. And then last but not least, you got to file the utility patent within a year of the provisional application. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get the priority date there too. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, can't I just tack provisionals one after the other? In other words, pay for a good one to be written up for me, and then I'll just file it on my own every year. Well, you can. The problem is the utility patent application can only reach back and grab the filing date, the priority date of a provisional filed within a year. So if you tack provisionals for 10 years, and then in year 5 somebody else files for patent protection on the same idea, you're going to lose the race to the patent office again. And frankly, you'd probably lose it under first to invent as well, because they'd say, what are you doing provisionals for 10 years? If this is a good idea, get it to a utility patent application, try to get it out to the public. So, thank you very much for coming. Do anybody have any questions? Yes?
The talk about inadequate support for utility application, can you expand just, is it just poorly written? Is it not comprehensive? Is it a whole nother invention? What's the deal?
Well, with support, what the examiner has to feel is that when they look at the provisional and they look at the utility, they have to say, yes, the inventor truly had this concept in mind. So it's usually a combination of poor writing, short provisionals, especially when inventors write their own. They usually write a couple pages, this is my invention. Lack of drawings, lack of quality drawings is another thing that they'll frequently focus on. If, for example, there's your invention has 3 different possibilities, well, you got to put all 3 in your provisional. If you just put one and then you end up, oh my goodness, the third one is really the best way to go, there won't be support. So generally, our approach is you try to write the provisional as broadly as you can to encompass where the inventor is and where you think they're going to be within a year. And then when you file the utility patent application, you narrow that down to exactly what it is. But in cases I've seen where provisionals have been denied, it's usually because people do it online, and usually the lack of good drawings. They do their own drawings, and and poor reproduction of drawings. A lot of times they'll scan in pencil drawings, and pencil doesn't scan in well. And oftentimes it comes down to the examiner. If the examiner is a kid right out of law school, they're probably going to take a whole lot of time to go through everything. If it's an examiner who's been there for 20 years, they're more likely to look at this and say, this thing's a piece of junk. I'm not going to waste my time on this. So, and you can challenge that, but again, anytime you challenge anyone in the patent world, you're usually spending way more money than you would have on doing it right the first time. Did that answer the question? Yeah. Okay. More questions? Yes?
Products evolve over a year's period of time. Your initial product and the one you come out with could be entirely different or look entirely different. How much protection do you have as you evolve through the trial and error process and the focus group process?
It depends on how well written your provisional was. If it covers where you're going, then you're fine. If you start stepping over the boundaries of the provisional, then you're no longer covered. You probably should file a new provisional, which if you go through a law firm will be less expensive because they can Control-C, Control-V a lot of the portion of the first provisional into the second. Or you may want to make the decision if based on your focus group feedback, you feel like this new invention, this is totally my invention, you may want to just go right to a utility patent application and not even claim priority back to the provisional. But hopefully, again, you've got that provisional nice and broad, so you're claiming a provisional to a cup, and then when you end up with a cup with a straw with a handle on the side, it's covered by that, hopefully.
Well, yes, are there any standards for the drawings that you need to see?
There are, yes. USPTO has 6 pages of legal gibberish on what the drawings should look like. Basically, the problem most people have with drawings is that they make the lines too thin. USPTO likes bold lines. They also don't like things pixelated. So if you're going to try to do your own drawings, or you're having somebody do drawings for you, you don't want them to send you a 300 kilobyte drawing that you're then going to blow up to an 8.5 by 11. They don't like pixelation. The other problem that people have with drawings is shading. There are certain conventions you're supposed to use for shading and for curvature, and a lot of people blow those, which is why if you're having drawings done, I'd suggest you go to a professional patent illustrator. Here in North County, we've got a great one. She's so busy, I don't think she's even taking new clients, named Jill Gilliam. There's a guy named Bill Beatty in La Mesa. who also does excellent work. He's a bit more of a drive for most of you folks.
What's the last name?
Beatty, B-E-A-T-T-Y. If you want his contact information, I hate to dump all this on Dina. You can write Dina. It's actually, I know Bill Beatty is B-B-T-Y-R-E-C at cox.net. BBTYREC@cox.net. Yeah, I've written him so many times. I know that one. Yeah, and so that's the main part. So if you go to a graphic designer, they may be super hot making brochures or doing websites, but unless they've done patent illustration, they don't know how to do shading. The other problem that you run into a lot is people who try to use gray shading, and you're not allowed to use gray. It's got to be black or it's got to be white, one of the two. It's kind of like computer code. And so a lot of people use shading to try to show the contour lines. Now, 5 years ago, you used to be able to get away with that. The USPTO was notoriously lax on horrible drawings, and then they had a bunch of their patents overturned in court, and so now they're getting much better on drawings.
Are they restricting to just computer-generated drawings, or can you still submit a hand drawing?
You can do hand drawings, and particularly for provisional patent applications, you can do hand drawings. If you're going to do them in pencil, my suggestion would be to, if you have any kind of a drawing program, scan them in to something like Photoshop, put one layer of the pencil drawings, and then put lines over it. Or if you're not going to do that, use pencil drawings, put some tracing paper over it, and use a very fine magic marker to trace it out, and then scan it, and then print it out and see what it looks like, because that's what the examiner is going to be getting. And test it before you send it. Yes?
What about these companies online, like Patent Pending or us, that charge you maybe $500 to do a patent pending?
Mm-hmm. You know what?
Talking about
Yeah,
$5,000.
yeah. I can do a $500 patent for you right now. You take your invention, write it down on a piece of paper, print it out, and send it in. Basically, if you want to get patent pending in an hour, you all can write down your invention on a sheet of paper, send it into USPTO, and you will be patent pending. It's just that later on, if you file for utility patent protection on it, they're not going to give you the priority date. But yeah,
Do they even look at it?
they don't. They don't even look at the provisionals, and the only time they get examined is if you try to do something with the provisional. So yeah, and it's not worth the filing fee just to get patent pending on something that won't turn into anything, unfortunately. Yeah, my prediction.
With a flash in the pan, I mean, if you knew that you had this thing that was so topical, so instant, you could do that.
You could. The problem is that if you go to a prospective licensee or anybody like that, before they give you any money, they're going to demand to see copies of your patent application. And if they see that one-page provisional, or the El Cheapo provisionalpatents.com, they're probably going to say, "Oh, that's a nice patent application. Come back to us in a year and a half, and we can talk then," because they know it's not going to provide support. Yes.
Can you reapply for a provisional? Let's say you had a provisional and it ran out and you did nothing, life came up,
Yeah.
and you want to restart.
Absolutely. If you haven't publicly disclosed your invention and the provisional is well prepared,
If you publicly did disclose your invention during the provisional,
well, if your provisional is expired and you publicly disclosed more than a year before today, you're pretty much out of luck. Now, what you should try to do is see if there's a way that you can tweak your invention so your invention becomes better than the one that you filed the provisional on. And then
it becomes a new invention.
it becomes a new invention. Now, your own disclosure in the past will count against you under this law called 35 U.S.C. 103 that says you're not going to be able to get a utility patent if your utility patent invention is a mere obvious improvement over the prior art in this case including your previous invention. But try to change your invention enough so there's, it's a bigger, badder, better invention that costs less or does it more efficiently or something like that. That's the easiest way for you to try to survive it. And my guess is if you invented this in the first place, you probably have had a few years to think about, oh man, here's a way we could improve upon it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's the safest way. Yes.
Along that line, I mean, I had an idea of looking up a patent, see if somebody had something similar. And I looked, and there was a big company that every time they blinked, they filed another patent. And it was the same company, same lawyer, same whatever. Is that what you're saying, that they was new and improved, and
That's
covered their ass?
That's correct. Once you file a patent on your first invention, let's say we invented the water cup. So we file a patent on this water cup. Then before the patent issues, we come out with her water cup. Oh my goodness, it's got a top and a straw. Okay, we've got to file what's called a continuation in part application to also protect that one. Then we come up with one with a handle on it. Okay, that's another continuation in part. Now, if your name is Bill Gates, it's no big deal to you. If you're a starving backyard inventor, it is a big deal to you. Continuation in part applications don't usually cost the full cost of the initial application, because you can usually use a lot of it. But I mean, just the filing fee on a utility patent application is $565. So it does add up. But yeah, that's what they do. They're probably filing continuation in part applications. And the way that you can look at that, when you pull that up on the USPTO website, is look for something called parent-child continuity data. And so if you look at a patent, the patent that this one claims priority back to, that's its parent. And then you also want to look for its children, because there may be more children patents out there that were filed based on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't read the exact what they did, but it just seemed like, man, it's all the same.
The other thing too, if you're a big, huge company and you've got a multi-million-dollar intellectual property budget, sometimes you just file a whole bunch of patents in a particular area, hoping that some of these patents will go through and you'll claim a huge section of inventions. I know with some of our bigger clients, particularly our overseas ones, they'll have us file for patent protection on a line of toys. And they'll have us not even follow through with 4 or 5 patent applications after they test it. But they've got the money to pay for it. And it's no big deal to them. And they'll just say, this is the only one that's going to make any money, so just file on this one. Just abandon the other ones. No big deal to us. Okay, $7,000 a pop. I don't generally just throw around $7 or $14 or $28,000 like that, but some people can. So I think that's what you're probably seeing there. Yes.
Where do you find an engineer to help you build a prototype or tweak it?
I have a recommendation. Joe Donahue, Learden Solutions. Joe Donahue, Learden Solutions. And he's actually the co-founder of Inventing Profit. And he can come at night. He can't come during the day. So he does prototyping work, does initial free consultations. You can talk to him. Here's my idea. And that really is where I think you should start with, does my idea work? Can it be made? And often, I always recommend people go to an engineer first if they don't have a proof of concept prototype that's working for them, just to see, first of all, is it going to work? Second of all, can I make it the way I'm thinking about making it? Because I know a couple people that have talked to Joe. They come to us and they say, well, this is my invention. They go talk to Joe, and Joe says, wait, don't file the patent application, because if they're going to make it, it's going to cost 5 times as much, because they got too many molds and the molds are a different type. Instead, you got to make it this way. So, yeah, it is actually, yeah. So, how do you find one? I just suggest Joe. If you want to look for somebody else, I would see if they offer free initial consultation, see if they're comfortable working with small inventors, kind of maybe ask them some questions about what's your average flow for an invention. Do you recommend going to a proof of concept prototype first, or basically, there are 3 levels of prototypes. There's a proof of concept that shows, hey, this thing works. Then there's an integrated design that says, this is the way that we're going to mass produce it. So that, because if we have to hand make every one, it's going to cost $500 each. This is the way we're going to mass produce it. And then there's a production prototype that's actually off a production line. And those are the really pretty prototypes where you can take that in and you can say, hey, Crate and Barrel, if you buy my new Nutcracker, every one of them is going to look this pretty because this is off the production line. Find out what their process is there, and if they tell you, oh, you need to go right to a production prototype, we need to do all this tooling. Yeah. Joe Donahue,
Well, what was the second type when we had proof of concept?
Integrated design and production. And actually, if you want, you can email. Joe has a PowerPoint presentation on prototyping. You can email him and ask him for it, and just say you're at this meeting. He'll send it over. All of our PowerPoint presentations, these are pretty much big beasts. They're all like 6-7 megs. You've got to have a pretty good size inbox. But yeah, again, it's part of the educational process. Yes. I don't know which one of you guys wants to go first, yeah?
What about a name for your idea? When do you have to have that name?
Well, you don't necessarily need to have a name. If you want to have a name, you can file for trademark protection on the name. But if your goal is just to invent something, get a proof of concept prototype built to show it works, get patent pending, and then try to sell your invention. If you're selling it to a big company, they've probably got, focus groups, and they've probably got, $150,000 a year advertising experts that'll figure out the color they want to make your product, the packaging they want to put in it, the name for it, the target market. They'll figure out all that stuff for you. So unless you have a super good name, I wouldn't spend your money on a trademark application. I'd put that money into coming out with a better product. If, on the other hand, you want to make it yourself, you do have to have a name for it, and it would be a good idea to protect the name. For your first product, you can get a 2-for-1 if you name your product the same name you're naming your company. Yeah. So if Nike named their first shoe the Nike, okay, one trademark covers both the company and the shoe. So you can save yourself some money on that.